found that the people who were in those positions of wealth, privilege and responsibility actually lived, at least for a time, among the poorest of the poor.
Clergy would come down from their country houses or their urban villas or their colleges in Oxford and Cambridge and do good, well-intentioned works. But it has to be said that when Oxford House was founded by students, the first thing they did was build themselves some squash courts. I mean, it was an importation of the styles and manners of their class.
The well-meaning but toffee-nosed clergyman became a familiar parody in the Edwardian music hall. Some invited it more than others, and none more so than the Bishop of London. A former head of Oxford House, Arthur Winnington Ingram, believed passionately in muscular Christianity. His remedy for boys who got into trouble with the police was particularly brisk.
Let them box in your presence for 3 months. It is the only thing they can do or care to do. After 3 months, advance gradually to dumbbells.
When he came to the East End, he liked to put on a Cockney accent to show that he was really part of their life. But he also had a great passion for taking baths. He would sometimes take 2 or 3 during the day. It was almost pathological. And he spoke at a particular meeting of East Enders and extolled the virtue of having regular baths. Of course, most of them didn't have a bath within sight. And he said to them, "And of course, when I've had a bath, I feel rosy all over." And a Cockney voice said from the back of the room, "Who's Rosie?"
It wasn't just the working class with whom the church had lost touch. Women had always taken a subordinate role in the church. To most clergy, the suffragette question was a political one. But to the suffragettes who were being arrested, imprisoned and force-fed, theirs was a moral cause. One of their leaders wrote to the Archbishop of Canterbury, Randall Davidson,
"I hope that the faithless, cowardly ministers of Christ who let these things be done without protest will reap their reward."
And in 1913, furious at its failure to back them, the suffragettes declared war on the Church of England. In an orgy of destruction, churches were burned, bombed and vandalised. Wargrave Church in Berkshire was completely gutted, and in Westminster Abbey, a suffragette bomb exploded under the coronation chair. Not even the Archbishop of Canterbury was to be spared. In May 1914, suffragette Annie Kenney arrived at Lambeth Palace on the run from the police, and in accordance with an ancient church tradition, demanded sanctuary from the startled Archbishop.
When I told the Archbishop that I'd brought my luggage, he became hot and irritated. We had a heated argument. Afterwards, Mrs. Randall Davidson came in. I felt really sorry for her. She appealed to me as being a woman who'd known silent suffering and deep sorrows.
Scotland Yard were summoned, and Annie Kenney was carted off to Holloway Prison. But she hadn't finished with the church, and on her release she repeated the stunt with the Bishop of London, Arthur Winnington Ingram. Annie Kenney again announced to the bishop that she would not leave his palace until women got the vote. The bishop, however, pointed out that since he was a bachelor, it would be quite improper for her to stay with him. Being England, this struck Kenney as a perfectly reasonable argument. Bombing and arson were one thing, but clearly staying under the same roof as an unmarried cleric was beyond the pale, even for the most militant of suffragettes. Yet the suffrage movement's most lasting effect on the Church of England wasn't made by bombs or demonstrations, but by the chairman of the Church League for Women's Suffrage. In 1913, Maud Royden thought the unthinkable, that women should be ordained as priests. The Church Times thundered, "For any sane person, the thing is so absolutely grotesque that he must refuse to discuss it." Undaunted, she began preaching in London.
I don't think there was any man who could equal her, really. In fact, I never heard a man preacher who was anything like so moving or so impressive. She was the most charming person that I've ever known in my life. She had this wonderful power of attracting people and putting across her ideas and her belief and her faith.
Maud's preaching attracted huge crowds, and she was invited to take the sacred Good Friday service at a London church. But the Bishop of London banned her,
So Maud took the service in the parish hall.